Right, so we should be, yeah, we're recording there now, Emma, from what I can see. So I'll hand you over to Emma. She can introduce herself. And as I said, drop any questions you have into the chat and we'll get to them at the end. So thanks, everyone. And if you could, last time, actually, for anyone new that has joined, just to make sure your mic is muted. Thanks very much.
So welcome everyone to this webinar on the inspection process. My name is Emma Zubia and I work in the inspection unit in SCI. Today we also have Lorcan Downey from KSN Energy who will be giving part of the presentation. So inspections are a required part of the SCI grants, and the purpose of this webinar is to explain the inspection process and how to pass first time, so grants can be promptly paid. As Jason has explained, we'll have some minutes at the end of the presentation for any questions that you might have. These are some of the headings that we are going to cover in the presentation. So we will start from the inspection unit and finish with the inspection results and appeals. There is a team of people working in the inspection unit in SCI who work within the corporate service team, and KSN Energy acts as our managing agent to complete site inspections. So what is the purpose of the inspections and why do we do them? So the purpose is to provide evidence that works have been completed, ensuring a proper distribution of the public funding. Works must be in compliance with agreed scope of works, safety and quality, regulation and standards, and scheme terms and conditions. Now we will go from the beginning to the end through the different steps that are involved in the inspection process. So they have been divided in 3 different parts. So we will go first through the before inspection, then we will go through the inspection and after inspection. So once that you have given a letter of offer and you have confirmed acceptance by returning it signed to SCI, then is when you can start works. You then complete the works. If any changes to the scope of works in the letter of offer happens, then in this case, you will have to communicate this to the EXEED team for their approval before works are notified as complete. Completion of the works also involves the uploading of certification for SCI to review, and we will explain what are the requirements on this certification later on the presentation. So only when both physical works and certification uploading has been completed, you should inform SCI that you are ready for the inspection. And this is now the start of the inspection process. Your project will be allocated to an inspector who will contact you via email or phone to arrange a suitable date to attend site. And the first step is for the inspector to review the certification that you have uploaded. The next step is to carry out a site inspection. And with the information from both, from the certification and the site inspection, the inspector will complete an inspection report. If the inspection report is a pass, it will be sent to finance team for their payment checks. Where the inspection report identifies reworks or non-compliances, this will have to be rectified, and it will only then move to finance team for the payment checks. And finally, when the inspection is successful, the grant will be paid upon finance team review. So we will go now through some of the steps that we have previously explained in some more detail. The scope of works on the letter of offer or any approved changes is the information that will be passed to the inspector. And here you can see an example of, in this case, it's a solar PV installation. And this information has been taken from the scope of works. It is important that it's clear and concise and that it reflects what is being installed on site. So here we can see on the top that no solar PV installation was existing before, and that 826 modules of 300 kilowatt rating is being installed. Here there is another example of an AHU, and some of you might be familiar with this tab as it's part of the completion form that it's been asked to you to complete at stage 2 letter of offer. You will also ask to confirm if works have been completed as per the letter of offer or if there were any changes to the scope. So you will see there a drop-down menu with different options, and you will have to select the one that applies to you. And I will now pass to Lorcan, who will continue with the presentation and will go through the different inspection parts.
Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, as Emma said, my name is Lorcan Downey. I work with KSN Energy, and we are the managing agent for SCAI for their inspections unit. So we're basically carrying out the site inspections. I'll just share my screen and we'll get going. Okay, is that okay there?
Yeah.
So from an inspection point of view, the inspection, as Emma said, it's broken into two parts, and there's a review of certification documentation and the inspection of the physical works. So regarding the review of the certification and documentation, a folder will be assigned to you on an SCAI SharePoint where you can upload your certification for review. You can see an example of it there. And within this folder then, each opportunity or measure that you have will have its own specific folder. So you may have a folder on PV, you may have a folder on lighting or air handling or something like that. So that's the repository for where the uploaded certification can be put. And what type of certification is it? So the following are the most common certs required for each opportunity. We'll just throw them up here and have a list of them. So product specification sheets, you can see there's an example of one there. Product declaration of conformity, commissioning certificates. Sorry, there's no sample there. Recce certificates, O&M manuals, and then lastly, photographic evidence and schematics as well. Commissioning certification should be undertaken by and provided by professional, registered and qualified personnel, and clearly state what works these refer to. So the organisation undertaking the commissioning should be clearly stated on the commissioning certificates together with their names and signatures and so on, and dated accordingly on the date of installation. So like a blanket letter with just "we commissioned something" is probably insufficient. It has to go into specific detail. So to know what documentation you will need, you need to check the SCAI design and certification document, and this documentation should be shared with you previous to this, but it's also available through a link into the EXEED folder, which is a link I think in the guidance document as well. So you can see here on the screen, it's a matrix type table where it would list all the different measures on the left hand side. So example here, there's micro generation less than 11 kilowatts, there's embedded generation. It would list them all down. You can see then as you move across to the green section, a yes will denote the type of certification that is required or what documentation is required. So in this case, product data sheets, CE marking, declaration of conformity. So product sheets based on those. You can just highlight them there. Just put these in so you can see how easy the table is to follow, and also then the certification here as well. So type test certificates, copies of ESB, NC6 forms, and so on, design reports, PV commission reports as well. So you can see on the next box there, commission report by professional installer. Yes, it's required. So you would require, for this example for PV, you will require a PV commissioning certificate. So the inspection itself, then once you've completed works and submitted all your required documentation, you can confirm you're ready for inspection, obviously with the EXEED team. And then what will happen is SCAI will allocate the inspection to ourselves, and we will then allocate an inspector. He will then arrange a suitable time and date to attend to site. And prior to that, you can have access to all the questions on the inspection report. It's an open book inspection. I think there's a blank template as well in that repository as well, which is also linked through the EXEED guidance document. So you can actually look for each measure what the inspector will be looking for when he comes to site. Access for inspection must be provided within 5 calendar working days from the inspector's call. The inspector will go through health and safety risk assessment before going to site, and then obviously any specific hazards or COVID-19 issues must be communicated to the inspector prior to his visit to the site. As previously discussed, the inspector, he will review or she will review all the documentation you have submitted prior to attending the SEI folders, prior to attending the site, and then they will proceed to the site inspection. They will actually come and meet yourselves on site. A couple of things here for the actual site inspection. The inspector must be accompanied by the applicant or an assigned representative. Our inspectors will have all the proper PPE equipment that they'll need, and obviously you'll have made them aware of any further or other requirements. Someone familiar with the layout of the site and the upgraded works must be available to answer any queries that the inspector may have. Also, original hard copy versions of certificate and documentation must be available for the inspector to review on site, for example, recce certificates and so on. So the inspector will check if the works are completed and installed to specification, if these are in working control, and if there's any health and safety concerns, as Emma noted at the start of the purpose of the inspection anyway. So the works completed, installed to specification, working under control, and obviously no safety and environmental concerns. Once the visit is finalised, the inspector then will go on to complete the inspection report. As I said, there's a blank template of the inspection report. Here's just an example of it there. So you can just see on the right-hand side, or the left-hand side, apologies, this is to do with the physical work. So the questions: is the final specification clear? Did the works match the specification? Percentage of physical works complete, date completed, and so on. Operational control, any safety issues, energy savings, and if there's any physical reworks required, there'll be a section there. So the report is divided into two sections. So it's physical works, and then there's also the certification work. So the report contains both of these, one after the other. Again, on the certification work, under each individual measure will be: has the correct product data sheet been provided, commissioning certificate, and any other relevant documentation that's called out within the design and certification matrix for that particular measure. Where the inspector result is a pass, it'll be notified as a pass. Where there are reworks, then these will have to be rectified within 14 calendar days. Only then will it move to the finance team for payment. So what does the inspection report look like when it comes back to yourself? So here's an example of a pass. So it's fairly straightforward. You can see from the left grade box, physical works is a pass, and there's no severity ratings attached to anything. Category of certification works is a pass as well in this case. Here would be an example of somewhere where there would be a rework. So you can see physical rework is a pass, but on the certification rework, there's reworks of, there's a SEV 2 and two SEV 1s on this one. These are just examples. So maybe something like there was no recce cert available, that would be a severity 1 rating. SEV 2 might be there was no data sheets available for the inverter modules or something like that at the time of inspection or uploaded. So that's the type of the way the severities are assigned. Another area here where it'll actually give you the breakdown then within the individual measure. So the physical works in this case is a pass. The certification work, though, is noted in this one as a reworks, and there's one severity 1, and there's a comment from the inspector: provide evidence of the ESB G10 witness test is completed. So, for example, in this case, when the inspector went out, the G10 witness test hadn't taken place by ESB Networks. And so there will be an explanation for the actual required reworks will be provided. And if you have any questions on the reworks, you'd chat to the inspector. Again, you would know before the inspector leaves site of what any issues, if they arose, would be. So then just to look at the types of severity ratings, the classification. So a severity 1 has a possible health, safety risk or highly non-compliant, and a rework requirement, so a rework is required. A severity 2 has a potential to compromise the effectiveness of the installation, and also a rework required. And a severity 3 would be a minor issue, and as is noticed there, not best practice. So it might be more of a kind of an advisory issue that was noted on site as well. So that's basically the boots on the ground side of it. Obviously, once you get your inspection report, if it's a pass, it goes up to the back to SEI and find same. If it's a rework, I think Emma's going to go through these, which is now as well.
Okay, so what do you have to do if you receive reworks? First, you will have to complete the reworks and then provide evidence of rework completion. And this will typically include photographic evidence or documentation. And we also ask you to sign the reworks declaration section on the inspection report. You will see there the part on the top is the one that it has to be signed by the applicant or the representative. And then the one on the bottom will be signed by the inspector once that he confirms that the reworks are okay. You have to upload this documentation or this information, so both the reworks evidence or reworks completion evidence and the declaration, the reworks declaration sign off to the reworks folder that will be assigned to you. We don't get notification of when something gets uploaded to those folders. So we ask you that once that you have finalized it and that you have uploaded the information there, that you can that you email the inspector, and that you CC those two email addresses that you see there, exceed.inspections@sci.ie and exceed@sci.ie, informing that you have uploaded the information. And you will have 14 calendar days from the issue of the inspection report to complete reworks. If you don't agree with the inspection results, you can appeal the results. There is a specific appeal form that you have access to that you will have to complete, and this is to be sent or submitted to appeals@sci.ie. Appeals must be received in writing no later than 14 calendar days from the date of the issue of the inspection report. And it is essential that any appeal is supported by appropriate documentation, such as sketches or photographs, and they must provide evidence to challenge the inspection findings or advice on mitigating factors that may have affected the outcome of the inspection. If an appeal is upheld, the inspection report will be reissued and the payment process above will be followed. The inspection report then will be passed to payments team for the checks, and this is the ending of the inspection process. So we will leave some minutes now for any questions that you might have. And as Jason has said at the beginning of the presentation, if you don't feel like asking the questions now, or if any questions that you might have in the future, you can always email them to exceed.inspections@sci.ie.
Perfect. Thanks, Emma. Thanks, Lorcan. That was brilliant. We have just one query in here from Liam. So is there a general disclaimer in the reporting documentation around an inspector noting, or more importantly, not noting a health, safety or environmental issue? The onus should always remain with the designer. I think there might be legal exposure for SCI and the inspector down the line if something happened. So I suppose the initial, is there a general disclaimer in the reporting documentation around an inspector? No. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. There is a disclaimer. Yeah. At the end of the inspection report.
Perfect. Thanks, Emma. So there is, Liam. If anyone else, unmute yourself. If anyone wants to drop a question, you feel free to unmute yourself if it's quicker than typing it out.
Yeah. I guess, Jason, on that one, I think that disclaimer has to be extraordinarily strong, because believe me, if something goes wrong down the line, everybody in site will be sued here. So I must say, I mean, I do this a lot. I'm in and out of sites all the time. I'm always very careful when I point up health, safety and environmental risk, and especially if you do it in writing, because there is no doubt, I would suggest that presumably your legal folks have checked this, but I think there's huge exposure because when you do an inspection, effectively, you're kind of saying SEI says this is safe. And really, I'm not sure that is the purpose of this type of inspection in terms of claiming a grant. So I'm just really raising the flag here more for yourselves to make sure that your legal people have absolutely buttoned this one down. Because, you know, this is the kind of stuff that can really cause awful trouble. And it might not happen for 5 years when I'm retired. So.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough,
Anyway,
Liam. Yeah, and it's certainly not, I suppose the purpose more so on our side is, have you done what was in your letter of offer? Really, that's probably the main focus, and is it working? But there is a little bit, I get your point, there is an element of, there is a kind of a health, safety, kind of environmental piece that is checked. But no, thanks for that.
Yeah, but just to
it was
say,
breaking up a bit there, I think.
yeah,
bad,
just
but
to
I
say
catch
that
up.
the responsibility, the final responsibility is with the applicant and the designer. We are just there to verify that works have been completed as per the letter of offer.
Yeah,
So
if you
it's primarily comparing the specification. So you say in the register of opportunities, this is the specification compared to the existing spec, and you're just checking that the specification of what was put in matches the specification in the register because it was measured against.
Essentially, or particularly what it's just grant aided. So if let's say you get a stage 2 letter of offer for a solar PV installation, for a new compressed air system or a new heat recovery system, and so if you said, or let's say lighting, just to make it simple, if we give you an offer for €100,000 to put in 200 light fittings, just hypothetically, when we go out, we expect to see 200 light fittings as opposed to 100 or 500. So at a basic level, that's what it really is. And obviously, if you tell us you're putting in a certain make model, it's not that. So just so anyone, like, in terms of, don't panic too much. Look, at a stage, this is the scope change piece. So if at a stage 2 letter of offer, you said you were putting in this particular make, model, and size, but for some reason through detailed design, maybe after a stage 2 offer, something changed or the company went bust or anything, just be transparent. All I'd ask is that you're transparent with us as any changes arise, because we have had cases where things have changed after a stage 2 letter of offer, but we've been notified and we've gone through the scope change process and it's been fine. But you're right, I think that was Kevin talking. So it is essentially just to check, what did we offer you from a spec point of view, kind of a quantity spec, make, model, whatever way you want to look at it, that it was put in. That's essentially it.
Just an added to that, Jason, like for us on one of our previous projects that happened close to it was in the west, closer to Northern Ireland, we had an issue with the recce's electrician being available. We had him on a different project, so we were trying to do within the time constraint, and we brought in electricians outside that were UK based, and essentially we said we essentially, what we did was we tried to make sure the paperwork was up to the proper standard, but we never went back to E and asked whether or not it would meet the requirements. So we found out we had to bring back recce people and have it kind of rechecked against. But that was our mistake. We should have went to the SI and said we have a problem here with availability of recce certified electricians. Should we wait? And he probably would have said wait, and that would have cleared off. So that's similar to here. Yeah, it's avoiding those things, stepping into something too early without discussing it with you first.
Yeah. No, appreciate for sharing that, Kevin. Thanks. Anyone else has jump or shout? Okay.
I just have one comment there. There's probably a lot of price changes have happened in the last few months on products and services that we're looking for in part of the grant. Is there any advice on that in terms of stainless steel has jumped mad, and as is everything else?
Yeah, I suppose unfortunately from a price point of view, you are capped at the letter of offer amount. We cannot increase it unless we were to go down the route of reapplying at that. So that, again, if that becomes a massive change, and I'm conscious obviously there is massive changes at the minute, we'd need to consider. But whatever you have, if in your case you have an offer and stuff is changing, I'm afraid you are capped at the letter of offer amount. That's kind of the general rule on acceptance of either a stage 1 or a stage 2 offer. We can't increase them, unfortunately. So, but if it becomes like, certainly, obviously, I suppose that's at the point, if you haven't made a stage 2 offer and you're at the point of making a stage 2 application and prices and everything are changing, that's where we'd want to we'd try and make sure that the costs you're, I suppose, applying for are potentially building that in. And I know we need quotes, etc., to figure that out. But if there's any scenarios like that, I would say let's talk directly to us, particularly at application stage.
I just had a quick question about commissioning certs.
Yeah.
So I know it was said that, you know, just writing it down on a piece of paper that it's commissioned doesn't count as commissioning cert. But I suppose, is it kind of defined what's required? Because obviously you've different types of commissioning for different systems. So like some kind of bits of plant obviously have kind of the supplier comes in and it's a very defined process and there's a sheet they go through. But say if it's something that's made up of lots of different pieces that might be commissioned by the process team, you know, is the same thing required there, or it's kind of a non-standard item, I suppose?
I suppose I could take that. I suppose I where you have a manufacturer with its own set out commissioning cert, that is fine and acceptable because they will set out their commissioning required for their piece of kit, compressor, boiler, whatever to make. Obviously, yeah, if you have an overall process with a lot of moving parts, yes, you might have a couple of different people, but I suppose it's to prove back to the inspector that it is being commissioned and each part of it has been. It wouldn't necessarily have to have one overarching one, but each part of the jigsaw is being commissioned, and that someone at the end of the day has signed off to say that it's functioning correctly and as it was meant to do. But definitely, if I'm Mitsubishi or Hitachi or someone coming in with something, I'll have my own commissioning cert. That's what we'd expect to see, that has been completed and signed and dated by a relevant trained type of person, where you have the kind of jigsaw arrangement of a process. Absolutely, we would expect individual commissioning certs for each of the different parts if that was the requirement. And once again, a detailed set out of what has gone on and what the process involved and who has taken ownership of that commissioning. Again, what I mentioned was that it's not good enough, I suppose, just to say it's commissioned and signed. It's probably to put a bit more meat on the bones, and I suppose that would be more satisfactory to the inspector than just a line, it is commissioned. I don't know if does that answer your question, Eva?
Yeah.
Again, if you've queries like that, I'm sure they can be directed into the inspections team, and then we can fire them out to inspectors prior to it, you know, and what you would expect to see for a certain type process or a certain type measure, and we can run that by them, and we could okay it in a way nearly before we went out to site on certain measures. You know, we're here to try and get people through the process as opposed to put up barriers to stop the process.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks.
Thanks both. I have there's another query dropped in by Garage. Garage, I might contact you individually, as it's more of a grant scheme question than an inspections. Just to let everyone know on the call, they probably, if they haven't already, will receive an invite to another webinar. We're on a roll next week, specifically on stage 2 kind of capital grant applications, and just going through that in a bit more detail. There's a few areas on the stage 2 that we're kind of seeing some common trends, be it the fossil fuel status, the present value of carbon savings, that we're just looking to I suppose, give a bit more, I suppose, context to and go into a bit more detail. So Garage, in terms of that, just your query around the stage 2 grant, once there's no double funding, yes, other funding can be made use of, but I'd probably prefer not to maybe go into detail on it here, if that's okay, Garage. So I'll get on to you individually. If anyone else has any, I think we might look to wrap it up. If again, as I said, if you have any individual questions, Emma, on the inspections process, I suppose I would so don't Emma's email inbox. Was it EXEED? I don't know if you can pull that up again, maybe, Emma, or we might drop it into the chat.
I'll put it there. Yeah, I'll put it there on the chat.
Yeah, perfect. And she'll drop it into the chat. If you have any specific questions, maybe in relation to your own project, and I know many on the call haven't got a stage 2 offer and maybe are only making stage 2 applications. Many have maybe just done a stage 1, or just have a stage 1 offer and might be going through the process of doing the study. So I suppose the purpose of this is kind of to highlight what's coming up next, or what's maybe down the line to consider and think about. So if you have any specific questions, drop them onto that email inbox. And in general, then, as I said, we'll be looking to do an applications kind of type webinar from a stage 2 point of view next week. So that'll obviously, I think, will bring further insight into that side of the house, I suppose, the actual, because there's a stage 1, anyone that's been involved is relatively straightforward. It's stage 2 that requires a bit more legwork in terms of supporting documentation. So that's okay. I might close it at that. I'll stop recording. Thanks everyone for